As the Coachella Valley continues to grow as an entertainment and cultural empire in the California desert cities, Mutual 111 is your go-to for local and regional arts, literature, music, special events, and theater. From the Mutual Broadcasting System studios in Palm Springs, it's The Desert Scene with Bonnie G.
And welcome to The Desert Scene. So happy to have you here. And I'm really happy to welcome to the show today Candi Quaid, who is a multi-talented performer. So I've been seeing her posts on Facebook popping up all over the valley doing a lot of performing. And I thought I definitely wanted to have her on today and chat a little bit. Hi, Candi. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing great. How are you, Bonnie?
Good.
Thank you.
Good. So let's talk first about, I know you have a lot of things coming up, but January 14th, you're doing a show at the Arthur Newman as part of the Sunday Cabaret series. And I believe it's also a CD release party. Is that correct? Tell us about that.
That's right. I'm doing a recording. So that event will be January 14th at the Joslyn Center Arthur Newman Theater at 3 p.m., and it will be a release of that recording. So I'm excited about that.
And tell us about the recording. What kind of stuff do you have on it?
So the recording is underway. I'm on the 9th track now, and it is, right in that stage. So, and it's kind of a culmination of a life story of music. It's when my children were younger and when I was teaching music, I would always say, life is a musical. And so it's really something of a cathartic process of my life's music for my children. And so it includes songs from the very first song that I was ever, I guess you'd say, discovered at 14 singing, to all the way to It's My Life by Shirley Bassey.
Oh, so what was that song that you sang at 14?
At 14, I sang the song People Need the Lord. And it was at a large church at the request of a choir director. I had been singing in choir since I was a young girl. And there was not a dry eye. And at 14, so he would stand at the back door, every Sunday and shake hands. Those of you that grew up in that setting might recognize that. And as we were leaving, this receiving line just kind of formed behind him. And that was when I knew just all these tears and stories and emotion, that it was a soul connection with people, and I knew that I had to sing. So that was when I knew I was a vocalist.
Okay, and what did you decide then that was going to be your career?
I did. At that point, I was committed to it, but my parents had different ideas.
Okay.
They wanted me to go into law. My father had done that. And luckily, the choir I was involved in high school was a show choir as well as a regular choir and an a cappella group. And through that, the lady that volunteered, Diane Shaw, was a vocal coach who ended up teaching me later some voice. And she took me under her wing and just said, what's your dream? What do you want to do? I get that, this is not really the dream for you, but... and she saw me, she really saw me, and she pulled me aside, and she actually asked me to kind of fib to my parents, which I did for several weekends, and help to quote-unquote volunteer at the high school, when in fact what we were doing was learning Italian arias, and she took me to multiple universities where I got a full vocal performance scholarship at several colleges. So
excellent.
I performed at college and studied opera, and met a contemporary, Rebecca Luker, who also was from the Birmingham metropolitan area of Alabama, like me, who, unfortunately, I have to share, passed away.
Passed away. I read that. Yeah, that's sad.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So, so did your parents finally come around to accepting, that this is what you wanted to do?
When you come home with a scholarship to college, it sort of changes things,
Yeah.
They still had some demands like, why don't you make this in more marketable by getting some education courses under your belt and various things like that. So, of course, I did. And that was good advice, because I definitely wanted to be a mom, and I got married and had my children, and through a set of circumstances, I became a single parent. But I had that education degree, and I I did teach, and I did write grants for a theater department at a local school where I was teaching, and began that under the grant was about Shakespeare for students. So it was kind of the bringing it down to the level of a 4 or 5 grader school. We were a 4th, 5th grade school. So it was a great experience. And so I used music in that way as well.
And so tell us geographically, where were you born, and what eventually brought you here to the desert?
So I was born in Birmingham, Alabama.
Okay.
And, there's a very rich musical culture there. So, a lot of that, we grew up on our porches with, mandolins and banjos and that kind of thing. My father is one of 7. We would end up on the beaches over Thanksgiving with all my cousins from everywhere, bonfires, picking and grinning, as we call it, And I definitely learned music from my dad. I washed dishes with him every night and cleaned the table, and he would put on the old albums with Nat King Cole, and we had 8 tracks with John Denver and Elton John in the VW pop-up van. So I was kind of a gypsy from the start in a way with him, camping and learning that lifestyle. But eventually, my husband at the time had a 3-month contract to work in Northern California. So we came out for that, and things kind of imploded there with a lot of he was not able to support the fact that I was doing music, and it ended up leading to me actually I ended up being a victim of stalking and other things there. And yes, and unfortunately that is something that I definitely do now. I use my music to advocate, and I work with women's shelters and travel and do that as well, and use my music for that purpose. I feel like I kind of lost my voice through part of that time. Yeah. And, it was on ABC News, and that's what the reporter said was, the irony of Candi, losing her voice, and now she's singing here for us today. So, it was kind of a thing that I did, and I still do, and I advocate for all sorts of trauma survivors, veterans. In fact, I'm actually putting on some fringe gloves and a velvet top hat right now as I am in a tour bus at a desk talking to you, Bonnie, to get ready to do a veterans thing this evening. Where, and I've developed a nonprofit through that called Healthy Ties that stands for Trauma Informed Educational Services. So through that, we advocate for all types of survivors. Which I think we kind of all are in a way after COVID, right?
So what brought you here to the desert, to the Palm Springs area?
And to the desert, that's an awesome story. I actually played tennis a lot when I was younger and when my kids were younger. My daughter was number 1 and 2 in the state of Alabama USTA, and she's actually teaching tennis in Spain and France right now. But she and I played a lot of tennis, and I was a state champion 3 times for a summer league in Alabama. And the 3rd time we had made it to sectionals and then finally to nationals, and it was going to be in Palm Springs. And I had been to California once, but mainly to San Francisco and Yosemite and that kind of thing up to that point, and missed that trip because my daughter had also tennis in Hilton Head, and I had to take her and chose the mom path. So I missed it with my tennis buddies, and so I never got to go to Palm Springs. So she went to UC Davis for school, and on spring break, right the spring break of COVID, so it was that February, I said, well, I'm going to take you down to Palm Springs for a trip for spring break. So we came down to do the tram and see the area. And, of course, as you know, everything was completely closed down. But I drove in, and she flew into that cute little boutique airport that we have there in Palm Springs and met me. But as I drove in, I saw the mountains and the sunsets, the bougainvillea, the lemon trees. I just couldn't believe all the tennis, just everything. And I just fell in love with it. And I had been in NorCal where my, everything kind of imploded with the marriage about a decade before that. And my children were all in California, so I wasn't going back to Alabama. And I thought, where am I going to be? And everybody knew I was kind of looking for my spot. And when I drove in there, Bonnie, I just knew that the Coachella Valley was calling my name. So I didn't want to leave.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was getting into, I have to say, because everything was closed down and all the entertainment was not really that visible. But I fell in love with the aesthetics of the area. It's just so beautiful. So beautiful.
So
Paradise.
Tell us, can someone come see you, or is there a performance that you're doing before the January 14th thing that somebody can come see you and hear you?
Yes, actually, we're taping here, Veterans Day. So I'm actually performing tonight for a Veterans Day thing. And then again in Dana Point with a group that I do. I've tributed Stevie Nicks when I made it to NorCal back at that time in 2012. I was discovered as a Stevie Nicks tribute artist. So I started doing that. So I've done that for about a decade. You can find a page on Facebook for that called Big Love Stevie Nicks and Friends Tribute Page.
Okay.
And that page highlights those events, which are events that is me as Stevie Nicks, me with a full band that does Fleetwood Mac, or me with Tom Petty, or me with Chrissy McVie, and it's all under the title of Big Love. So it's kind of catered to the event. With friends, meaning things like Stevie's covered over the years with rock and roll with Led Zeppelin, or award shows for like Linda Ronstadt, Annie Lennox, Bonnie Raitt, Sheryl Crow, all these people that she's done things with. So we kind of bring in a lot of different music to spice up the show, change it up. It's never the same twice. So people can see it over and over and still enjoy a new show. And so that's Big Love. And then, of course, on my page, Candi Quaid, Candi with an I, Quaid on Facebook, you can find my other events. I just finished a World War II show at Arthur Newman with directed with Todd Mikowski, and Frankie Ramone was in that with Marsha Harp.
Yes.
And then we just did another one, Evening in Roma. So, and then my next one will be January 14th there. And then other than that, it's Big Love events, and I'm doing some ladies conferences and Christmas shows around the desert at country clubs and things like that. So you can book me for that if you like, and follow along with Big Love and Candi Quaid.
So, Candi, I like to ask, I'm a performer, and I have a lot of performers on the show, and singers in particular. How would you describe your style, or what you bring to the stage when you're singing?
What I do is I feel like I connect with the story of the song, whatever I'm singing, whatever the venue, and I feel like bringing that and sharing this connection with people is what music is all about. So in any venue or genre, that's what I'm always about. Recently, my son got out of a situation, and I think as a parent, we're just about as healthy or as free as our least healthy child kind of thing. And so when he did that, it inspired me to go back to opera. So recently I did do a show or two that genre. And even with that, it's just connecting with the audience, connecting with the story. And I feel like that's what I bring to it. And hopefully sharing stories and being heard and seen myself was a very healing thing through the things that I briefly described that I went through.
Right.
And so Healthy Ties offers that, and helping people to be seen and heard through COVID. Yeah. I actually, when I did get to the desert, now this is an interesting part of the story, I was told by a realtor, don't buy right away. You need to rent and see different areas of the deserts. Everything's so different from place to place. And that was really true advice, as you know. Every area from, Indio to Palm Springs, it just has its own personality. So I did that. And I called, she gave me 3 names of people who had casitas to rent, and I did. And I rented a casita from a lady and got there, and the key didn't work to the casita. And she said, oh, no, it was the house key. Just take the house. So I opened the house, and as I do, I'm on the phone with her, and she's in New Zealand with her son that owns a theater in New Zealand. She ends up, I open the door, and facing me is the picture of the theater in my little hometown in Alabama.
Wow.
The marquee of the theater. She had painted it. She's a great artist, and she's from my hometown, as it turns out. So I have a cool new friend. But over COVID, she and I shared from New Zealand to where I was at her house. In the Coachella Valley, pictures of my story, and we got to know each other through pictures and stories, and added another element to Healthy Ties where we developed a healing arts modality, sharing pictures and writing songs and painting what we were sharing being heard and seen and healing arts. And
Yeah.
so that's a huge part of Healthy Tides. So that's what I like to bring to the stage.
Performing should not just be, ego gratification for the performer, but yes, bringing some healing to it as well. Well, Candi Quaid, so nice to talk to you. So I want to remind everyone, January 14th at the Arthur Newman Theater, as part of the Cabaret series, you'll see Candi Quaid, and check out her Facebook page, Candi, Candi Quaid, for all her other shows coming up. Thank you so very much for being here, and hopefully we're going to get to perform together, I hope, in the next few months. But continued success.
That would be so exciting.
And thanks for being here today. Really appreciate it. All right.
Thank you. Take care.
Candi Quaid, and with the rest of you, we'll see you on the next Desert Scene.
Join us again for the Desert Scene with Bonnie G from Mutual 111. Be sure to visit thedesertscene.com for more show information and mutual111.com for our full library of episodes.